Good afternoon. How's everybody today? I'm assuming there's actually an audience out there, and this is not virtual augmented reality, because all I see is white lights. It's just like, poof, I don't see anybody. Well, thank you very much for coming. I want to talk a little bit about why I think internet exchanges are even more important today. I wanted to thank NIC.br. I want to thank IX.br for their kind invitation to having me come down here to São Paulo. It's really great. I've enjoyed the time. I've enjoyed meeting new people. So thank you to NIC.br. You guys have put on an extremely well-organized, awesome event. And I think that it has been extremely valuable to a lot of the participants here. I know I have made some new friends. I've reacquainted with some old friends. And so it's part of that whole networking thing that's really valuable. So, internet exchanges. Why are they important and why are they relevant and why are they going to even be more relevant to the internet today? Sometimes before we go in and look at something going to the future, we need to sort of look at the past and see where did we come from? How did we get to where we are today? So I want to just take a couple of minutes and go through what that looks like from a historical perspective. A long, long time ago in a place far, far away, there was the NSFNet, the National Science Foundation Network. And the NSFNet started out as a research and education network connecting various organizations and universities and so forth together in the early, mid-1980s in the United States. As the NSFNet grew and they started building things together, they realized they needed to be able to interconnect these organizations. So in 1986, we had this wonderful, awesome, extremely fast backbone that ran at 56 kilobits per second. How many of you today could live with an internet connection that ran at 56 kilobits per second? I don't even think a lot of us can even remember dial-up at those speeds versus running a national backbone at that speed. Well, as all things go, the NSFNet became successful and started to grow. So they needed to make it faster. So around the mid-80s, late 80s, they upgraded to a T1-based network. In other countries, that could be called an E1, depending on how many channels you have in the system. That was a 24 times increase in bandwidth. So now we have a national backbone that's running at an extremely blazingly fast 1.5 megabits per second. And that was awesome. But only a few years later, we needed to upgrade this network again. And so we did. We upgraded it to a DS3-based network, 45 megabits per second, and we added more nodes. Now, instead of just being 6 or 7 nodes, as we had a few minutes ago, we are now having dozens of nodes across this infrastructure. And in fact, this infrastructure started to interconnect to other countries. So the internet continued to grow. We started to see that it was not only beneficial from a research and education perspective, but it was also beneficial from a commercial perspective. And so commercial exchanges had to start being built because there were some acceptable use policies on being able to use the National Science Foundation network for commercial traffic. So what we saw was this commercial enterprise started, this commercial internet started, and we got one of the first internet exchanges, KIX, or the Commercial Internet Exchange, was created. Then we saw out in Virginia the creation of May East. May East was actually in the basement of an office building in the car park garage. That's where that infrastructure started. It was based on FDDI technology, a very old fiber network technology, and it could support up to 100 megabits per second. By 1997, it was estimated that over 50% of the global internet went through May East. Well, then we created May West, not to be confused with the actress. Mae West got created out in San Jose, California, Silicon Valley, at 55 Market Post. And that got going, and that saw almost 40% of the global internet traffic. Palo Alto Internet Exchange got created. Folks like Paul Vixie, Stephen Stewart, and others helped build PAX and build that into being a premier place to interconnect in the West Coast. The London Internet Exchange, I think Ben was here earlier, he might still be here today. Shout out to the Links folks. They built the London Internet Exchange, and the Links grew in such a volume and capacity over the years that they became one of the preeminent, dominant places in Europe, and in fact for many places around the world, to interconnect. Huge amounts of traffic was now flowing through places like Links. We also saw this happen with Amstix in Amsterdam, the Internet Exchange for Amsterdam. That became another eminent place for connectivity. Now, we're talking about all these places overseas and in Europe and the United States, but let's take a look at something a little bit closer to home. IX.br, 5.59 terabits. Awesome, guys, come on, awesome. That's a huge amount of traffic, right? That's a huge amount of traffic that you're keeping in region, that you're keeping here. This is a cut and paste that I pulled down earlier today right off of IX.br's website. So it's pretty fresh. Why internet exchanges? Why do we care about internet exchanges? I think a lot of you know the answers to that, but just to refresh, it helps keep traffic local, right? Because here we have 5 terabits a second, not 56 kilobits, not T1, not DS3 speeds, but 5 terabits and growing of traffic that's being kept local. Obviously, this is reducing the cost of communications. You're not having to take this traffic all the way up to Miami or all the way across to Africa and then up into Europe. You're able to keep that traffic here in region. This is obviously reducing latency between the networks. So your customer experience is going to improve. Your latency goes down, your jitter goes down, your packet loss goes down. It also improves network resiliency. But part of the thing we should start to think about is that an internet exchange in a region also improves the network security. Okay? And why and how does it improve network security? We're going to talk about that here in a brief moment. But in network security is one of the big things we're worried about. Earlier this week, I did a little presentation on Monday for a few hours talking about network security. And one of the common questions I got, whether it was during an actual presentation time or it was during coffee break, was how do I protect against a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS? How do I help manage that? How do I help maintain that? What is the rule I can put into my router? How can I configure my MikroTik, my Cisco, my Juniper router so that I am protected against a distributed denial of service attack? And there isn't a single rule that you can go do that with, because if there was, we would all be doing it. But what we can do is we can take that risk and we can spread it out amongst a whole bunch of connections at an exchange point through peering. We need to also keep in mind that peering is personal. The ability to build a peering relationship between two organizations, it's about people relationships and it's about business relationships. If this gentleman here does not trust me as a peer, he is not going to interconnect his network to my network because he doesn't want something on my network to cause him problem and cause his customers pain. So there has to be a personal relationship. We have to build that relationship, right? So a little joke I like to say is networking is better than not working. And I don't mean networking and not working in the sense of interface cards on my router. I'm talking about networking from a people perspective, from a business perspective. It is a team sport. This isn't an individual sport. All of us in this room are working together collectively to build a better internet in Brazil. and Latin America. If it's personal, then we need to have somebody who's going to be responsible for it. And this is a peering coordinator. This is a person in your organization who's responsible for building those relationships. When I wrote this slide, I thought of 3 or 4 possible attributes of what a peering coordinator was. And I want to add another one in a moment here. But this superhero is a part engineer. They're technical. They understand the technology of what's happening. They understand the technical limitations of what's going on. They're creative in being able to solve technical problems. They are part salesperson, which really means they're part relationship person. They're part an individual that can sit down, come to an event like this, come to a smaller event, or just meet for beer one night with somebody else to discuss possible peering. They're also partly a financial wizard because they understand the economics and the cost of peering and interconnect. Both the cost and operational maintenance and maintaining the relationship, but also the cost savings to the organization. Another thing this person is that I didn't get up on the slide is this person is also part ambassador and part relationship fixer, right? Because sometimes organizations don't want to peer because something happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they're like, no, I'm never going to connect with them ever. Not going to happen. Well, we grow, we age, we get better, we learn from our mistakes, and sometimes the peering coordinator's job is to come in and help rebuild that relationship, rebuild that trust. And I would encourage all of you today is that if you have folks that you won't peer with, you should go back around and reevaluate that and understand why you won't, and is it really a reason why you won't peer, or is it something that you can move on from? The internet today is changing ever more. It's constantly growing. We've heard some great presentations today. Michael yesterday from Extreme talking about 5G. We had the two gentlemen up here earlier today from Fastly talking about micro data center facilities, putting things in at the tower. We have mobile computers happening, we have tablets happening, we have our iPhones, our droids, all of these things. All of these devices are drawing and consuming bandwidth today. We even have tablets, phones, cars, toasters, coffee machines, Internet of Things, IoT sometimes could also be Internet of Toasters, because everything's going to get connected. I remember one time somebody was telling me about IPv6, and when I was first trying to get my head wrapped around this 128-bit address space, and they said, look, John, the way this works is really simple. There's enough IPv6 address space out there for every piece of crumb from every piece of toast to have its own unique address, and then we'll still have some. I think that's how we got to Internet of Things, because it's really Internet of Toast. We have all these little devices that we can now connect to the internet. You've all heard the saying, there's an app for that. There's an application for almost anything today I can download from iCloud, my iPhone, App Store, etc. And apps are growing like crazy. So we need to be able to be resilient in connecting those applications and getting them there. So let's talk about that. Today, what was an enterprise is potentially becoming more of a service provider. A bank is more of a service provider network than it is a classic enterprise environment. They should certainly start thinking like that. A hospital that wants to do surgery, that has telemedicine, that has the ability to take an MRI or an X-ray scan, that image, that very large file, and send it somewhere. They want to be able to send it as quickly as possible. And this is where an internet exchange is potentially very valuable, because an IX gives the ability for that enterprise organization to connect and interchange data with somebody else that's connected to the exchange without having to go through transit. That is a huge cost savings. Let's look at a bank. I like to use a bank as an example. Banks are very conservative organizations. I don't know about you, but they hold my money, they hold your money. We certainly want them to be conservative. We don't want them to be making hasty decisions. And that's a good thing. A lot of banks, however, do not connect to an internet exchange. They should. The reason they should is because their customers are using mobile devices to be able to actually connect and do online banking. Banks are getting attacked by cyber criminals. Customers are getting mad because the applications aren't working, because the bank's networks are clogged. Just go back to December 2017 when the Dutch banking infrastructure got hit with a distributed denial of service attack. Banks that were peering, banks that would peer and interconnect are going to have a much better ability to be resilient and to be able to withstand those kinds of attacks. Because instead of having their transit connections clogged, they're going to be able to have a lot of their customers that are local in region coming across a peering session. And thus they're going to continue to be operational, and their customers are going to be happy. So, if an enterprise benefits by peering through improved network security, improved network resiliency against a distributed denial of service attack, holiday shopping. I sometimes wonder whether or not holiday shopping is like a denial of service attack, right? Have you ever gone shopping, pulled out your credit card, and it won't work because the network is so overloaded processing credit card transactions? Well, back in the day when our dial-up was how we did credit card transaction, our little point-of-sale terminals would dial out and make that connection. You could easily swamp the phone lines. Now, most of our point-of-sale devices are IP-based, but they still need to make a connection. If that connectivity between that point-of-sale device, the processing, and the bank all flows through an internet exchange environment, then there is a better likelihood that those transactions are going to happen without delay. There's going to be lower latency, there's going to be a quicker turnaround, and thus a lower cost. If you have a fiber cut between here and Miami, does that mean your entire network infrastructure is down? If you're peering, you have all those 1,000+ peers of IX.br are interconnected, and you're able to exchange traffic with them as opposed to having to go all the way up to Miami and back again just to go across the street. At the end of the day, as network engineers, we owe it to our customers. It doesn't matter what company we work for. We owe it to the end users of the internet that we want to create a better customer experience. And the way we're going to be able to do that is through better use of internet exchanges, getting these critical enterprise organizations to connect to the internet exchanges and exchange traffic. This also creates an opportunity for internet exchanges to grow its membership. Bring on more folks, because now you can bring the banks in, bring government in, bring healthcare in, bring education in, bring those services in, and make it overall better. Internet exchanges are critical players to the internet. Internet exchanges are critical to the online continuing growth of online access and use. Mobile users want access to their data. They want access to their applications. As we heard from Extreme yesterday, 5G networks are going to become very sensitive to latency for certain types of applications. Certainly when we have autonomous vehicles, whether they are an autonomous car or it's an autonomous drone delivering us a package or delivering us our dinner takeout. We want there to be low latency. We want there to be rapid, reliable communications to those devices. Those devices need to be able to get back to the applications and the data that they are connecting with. Internet exchanges are going to play an even greater role in regional stability and security of telecommunications and internet infrastructure. And so we want to make sure that we keep our IXs healthy, we keep them vibrant. Earlier we heard the folks from Fastly talking about the ability to take and push the edge out and create this deep edge where we start putting certain types of content at the cell tower. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the ability to take that static, or not static, but one-way direction type content that end users want and putting that as close to that end user population makes a heck of a lot of sense. But I don't think that that means that that's the end of internet exchanges. I think internet exchanges are going to continue to be extremely relevant and extremely valuable to the internet and its security and resiliency and reliability. Why? Because we have a whole different type of traffic usage mix. We have all the commercial traffic, the back and forth traffic. We have the architectural firm, the law firm that's interconnected across the IX to get to cloud-based applications that require bidirectional traffic that's real-time traffic. That, I don't think, is going to necessarily scale very well or easily today into a cell tower type of environment. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, content from caches such as Fastly or Akamai or others, yes, those make a lot of sense to start pushing that information out to the edge. IX.br is one of the top internet exchanges in the world, and it's critical to its region for continuing that stability and continuing that security. It's also critical to the network security of the rest of the internet, because you have the ability to work with partners to look at your data, to see what bad things are happening with the data, to turn around and be able to communicate that information, work with cert.br, work with other certs, and be able to fix and correct problems in region before they become a problem worldwide. Maybe you will see something happen here in Brazil, the beginnings of a worm, the beginning deployment of malware as it starts to wake up one day in Brazil and starts to push out. You can see that traffic here. You could see that traffic going across the exchange. You can also work at protecting that traffic and helping save things from happening badly on the rest of the planet. So IXs like IX.br and others have done a great job in helping grow internet on a regional basis. I think they're going to continue to be a key critical part to the growth of internet on a regional basis. The ability for service providers to connect to those IXs, use that data coming from the IX to better manage and better control their internet and that customer experience is going to be critical. So, in closing, regional internet exchanges are a critical part of a vibrant, thriving internet community. And what I can tell you since I've been here since Monday is what I've seen with NIC.br, IX.br, and the CERT folks, and all of you today, is you clearly have built and are continuing to run a vibrant and thriving internet community here in Latin America and in Brazil. And that is awesome. So thank you for that. You guys keep doing a great job with that. Keep working on building your exchange and building that interconnection. Build those relationships. I can tell you there are peering coordinators in this room. Find them, seek them out, build those relationships, build better connectivity. And with that, I'm happy to take any kind of questions or discussion, because I have a minute left.
Thank you, John. Alguma pergunta? Please, Ben.
Hi, John.
I need a translator, I'm sorry, I don't Hi, Ben.
That was a great presentation, thank you, and thanks for the shout out, and I think for all the IXPs, it's especially off the back of the potential Fastly that it's the end of the world for IXPs, it's great to see. But I want to ask you a question, because it's, and then I'll come to a challenge that the IXPs are facing in order to deliver what you're talking about. Nowhere in what you presented was cost an issue. Didn't talk about cost. It was all about all the good things: the security, the latency, the resiliency they can bring in. Where do you think there's going to be that barrier between actually this becomes too expensive to do, or we're prepared to pay actually more to make sure that our banking or our IoT things are working properly through an IXP?
Well, I mean, cost is something that you pull from a lot of different areas. All the goodness items that I listed are, each one of those is directly tied to a potential cost, right? If customer experience suffers, then your cost is brand damage, brand reputation. As the Fastly folks showed from one of the Google points, was if you go to an online commerce website and that site is too slow, your likelihood of going back to that site again later and buying something is lower. So there's a cost of loss of opportunity there. I think that we're going to have to go a long ways before the general economics of connecting to an internet exchange get to a point where they're upside down, and we're not going to do that anymore. I think that internet exchanges have such a huge cost savings across the board for organizations that we're going to have to see a major paradigm shift that I'm not able to see today, but I think we're going to have to see a huge paradigm shift before somebody says, no, I'm not going to go to an exchange, it's too expensive.
So let me talk to you about what that paradigm shift may look like then.
Sure.
So the economics of an IX is we have gig ports, we have 10 gig, 100 gig ports, and an exchange the size of Links, and also IX.br, NIC.br, has the majority of the revenue comes in from the big capacity. And that's how you keep the exchange running, how you keep it going. And that is a lot from those big OTT content providers. So it's the videos, it's the stuff that's really making the big data packets happen, which is great. It keeps the whole ecosystem alive. A lot of the things that we're talking about here in your presentation, so things like banking transactions, maybe health biometrics, maybe we're talking about Internet of Things, sending small packets to cars. We're talking about much smaller packets, much smaller, ultimately lots of data. And so the growth then potentially comes from having an awful lot more networks making the IX more complex, but they are costing more than we're even able to run it. We have a few banks joined in London now already, and some of the headaches we found in terms of dealing with them is they've got their own regulatory side things to deal with as well, particularly after the financial crisis of 2008. The amount of paperwork that needs to be done on both sides to be able to get them to join is phenomenal. They want to see SLAs. I don't know, you can buy an SLA from AMSEX, but generally most IXs operate on a best efforts basis, and so that doesn't always marry up. If we're then to have the IXs be able to deliver to these much smaller packet, so these enterprise networks that are coming in, maybe there does need to be a shift. Maybe it's actually, you don't want a lot of capacity, but the cost to us, the internal cost to deliver that and make sure it's got doing, is going to be higher. And so, can you cope with prices going up? And that's sort of where I was coming from. I
think that's an interesting and valid point. You're certainly, when you're looking at small packets and you're looking at things where you have a mobile vehicle or something where it's just simply sending very small update location type packets, or data that says I need to change direction, or something along those lines, we're not doing huge, big 1,500 byte, 9,000 byte type packets. Right, we're going to have smaller bandwidth, but where we have some value is latency, packet loss, and jitter control. So it's not just only how much bandwidth can we shove across a pipe, but I think one of the value points is, hey, I can offer you a connection that has lower latency, lower jitter, lower packet loss opportunities. With respects to SLAs, I honestly think I would start really looking at how do you build an SLA for a large enterprise organization such as Links or IX.br. I mean, I agree, we've traditionally built exchanges on, hey, it's a best effort, and if we blow up, you still have your transit provider because BGP will automatically fail over. Well, we're running an enterprise now. We're actually running a business of an exchange. We're getting money in, we have budget, we have accountability, we have all those things just like any other business. Maybe it makes sense to actually start putting together some types of SLAs and to look at that and to think about how do we assure these kinds of other customers that when they send us their packets, it's probably going to work.
I think that can work for some IXs, and it depends on their governance as much as anything else. So if you're a commercial exchange, then actually, to roll out an SLA wouldn't be too difficult. If you're a community, a member-based exchange, then, so like Links, we operate in the best interest of our members. If we were to then have members that are connecting with SLAs, how do we prioritize? So if something goes down, we've got the members that actually...
I see an agenda item on the next Links annual membership meeting.
Great. Thanks, John.
Which I'll be happy to be attending.
Love to see you there.